So I will talk about breaking code today and getting cheating in contract breed. About us, Rezo is leading some sort of company for doing trading on the stock exchange. Amir is an accountant who works for, let's say, one of the big four companies in accounting in the world. And I'm a researcher in the field of trusted computing and virtualization in the College of Management in Israel and in the University of Jyväskylä in Finland. I lead Truly Protect startup in the trusted computing field, and I'm also Bridge Life Master. Amir, by the way, was a European champion in Bridge, 2003. So everything we describe is something that interested us to study. We are not really crypto geeks. This is all basically hobby work. Now, about today's talk, we will talk about the scientific aspect of breaking codes and some real-life example. This is really about some top players, like best players in the world, being found cheating in breed in 2015. We focused about two Israelis, Mr. Schwartz and Mr. Lotan Fisher. We focused about the Israelis because we are Israelis. We were actually sitting in front of the computer rooting for the local team to win, and we actually tried to protect them even when the accusation arrived, and then we found out, we tried to protect them and we found out that they were really cheating, but not in the way people thought that they were cheating. So that's what we describe, and we will present our findings and also other people's findings. Whatever was not found by us, we will basically say. If we sin further than others, that's because we stood on giant shoulders and we were able to actually see further. We basically comment mostly about the Israeli Bridge Federation talks, which are available online. We are not invited to the American Contract Bridge hearings or the European Bridge League hearings, and these are not available online, but we know more or less what happened from rumors. So, first of all, why would somebody cheat in bridge? I mean, that sounds like a game that, like, four old ladies play in a kitchen, and doesn't sound like something that you'll make lots of money. So, apparently, first of all, bridge is not a spectator sport. Nobody will pay to watch bridge like people are paying to watch football or basketball or boxing. People are not paying to watch bridge. However, people actually will pay money to professionals to play with them or to play in a team with them. And as a result, there are professional bridge players making significant amounts of money, let's say between $200,000 to $500,000 a year, which perhaps not compete with Cristiano Ronaldo, but it's enough money that somebody would want to compete for, to play for. And on the plus side, the career of a bridge player begins, let's say, semi-professionally at the age of 14. Let's say some play professionally at the age of 18, and it can go on for 35 to 45 years on average. Some play professionally even when they are 90 years old, 89 years old. So it's a pretty long career, and it's a pretty high paycheck. There is motivation to actually cheat. It's not just something that you would cheat for fun. Okay, so I'm trying to talk as much as I can about bridge without actually teaching bridge. So bridge is a game that played between two pairs, north-south and east-west. There is nothing special about the direction, it's just the names. Like, I can play north-south in one board, and on the next round I'll be east-west. There is nothing special about it, and you can actually rotate the board. In a team's game, four players plays against four players. One team sends a north-south pair to play against the east-west pair of the other team. The other team sends north-south pair, east-west pair to play against, north-south pair to play against the east-west pair of the first team. Now, in a normal game of bridge, you play with identical cards to minimize the element of luck. So our north-south plays the same cards of their north-south, our east-west plays the same cards as their east-west, and the cards are held on something like that called a board. Each round you pull the cards from the board and you see your cards. After you end the round, you return the cards to the board, and they are playing identical same cards on the other table. Now, a board usually takes about 7 or 8 minutes to play. A short competition takes about 24 boards, or about 3 hours. And let's say World Championship takes hundreds of boards and several days. If you play every single board in a World Championship and you reach the final, then you play something like 800 or 900 boards. Now, the last thing is that in bridge, everything that you play, every card that you play, everything that you do is going to encode some meaning describing your hand to your partner. For example, a high card followed by a low card may indicate that you have an even or odd number of cards in that suit, that you favor an higher ranking suit or a lower ranking suit, that you like the lead or you don't like the lead. Everything basically is encoded there. And this encoding is not cryptographic, which means the other party, if I'm north-south, east-west, is entitled to know all my encoding methods, or everything systematically that we do, the other party is entitled to know. There is full disclosure. And in the last thing is that in bridge, like in many other sports, most of the times where you actually lose points, you screw yourself. Most of the acts that actually cost you point or win point to the other teams are self-inflicted. You try to guess what cards happen to be dealt right now to partner based on the bidding, based on the play of the card until that point. Sometimes you'll get it right, sometimes you'll get it wrong. Usually good players will get it right more often than bad players. So on a single round there is, let's say, 50 plus some epsilon chance for the better team to win. If you play significant amount of rounds, then eventually the better team is vast favorite to win. I mean, let's think about the casino here. Sometimes the casino pays the gambler, but the casino in the long run is usually vastly favorable to win. So that's all about bridge. I'm not going to talk about bridge anymore. And, there are basically two types of cheating. The first type of cheating, which is also the most common, and it's the one that I'm going to focus on, is conveying information that illegally not through gamings. Gamings means that, for example, you cannot convey information by making faces, making sounds, I don't know, pulling your tongue, scratching your head. That's basically illegal to convey information in that matter. You can only convey information using the card that you play or the bids that you make. The second type of cheating, which is rarer and I'm not going to deal with, but it also exists, is reporting results that on a match that never happened. Let's say I pay you to say that I won or something, following the dealing of the cards, following the replication of the cards, following the board, illegally looking at your opponent's card, trying to play a card that was already played, using illegal substances, I don't know. All that stuff is considered illegal, but it's done much less often than the first one, which is, by the way, not very often at all. I mean, in the world class level, bridge is being played for about 80 years, and there were, let's say, less than 50 cases of cheating, less than 20 cases or 30 cases of actually conveying illegal information. So, first of all, to prevent conveying information, even accidentally, you don't really speak when you play bridge. You may see it in the newspaper like North opened one spade or one club, and, oh, sorry. What it means is that North pulls like something like that from a bidding box and places it on the table. So there is no like forceful one club, loud one club, hesitating double, forceful double. That's basically all gone from the real game of bridge. Information is not supposed to transfer, and oral bidding is really rare unless it's really like an amateur's game. Now, in professional games, they used to play with those boards. Then in 1965, two British players were found to convey information by the way they held their cards. Like if you held it in a certain way to convey some information about the distribution of hearts that you have in your hands. And as a result, in tournament play, in professional games, there is like a screen that goes diagonally over the table, and east doesn't see west, north doesn't see south. You don't see your partner, so you can't convey legal information. Now, as we will see in a second, screens did not prevent illegal information passage, but they actually made it more difficult to transfer information. So, as I said, there is a screen that goes from northwest to southeast. Basically, south and west see each other, or north and east see each other, but every player doesn't see his partner, and as a result, you cannot convey information, and you cannot transfer information to your partner illegally. Now, that did not prevent cheating. As it occurred in 1975, two Italian players were caught tapping each other's foot under the screen, which led to first small tea tables to be placed under the tables, and then that led to screens to go actually under the tables. And in 2013, cawing and other sounds were actually found to pass the screens, which I will soon demonstrate. And all that happened before the main event actually occurred. Okay, so that basically demonstrates, how bridge is wait. Sorry, for some reason. Okay. Fine, let's do it like that. That basically demonstrates how bridge is played in a tournament play. Basically, there is the screen, there is the beads, and there is like a tray with the players passes and transfer the beads. When the play is basically over, people collect their beads, remove the tray, put the board on the table, open a small shutter in the screen so they can see each other play, and basically play. Now, sorry. Sorry. leads us to the event that happened in 2013. These are basically two German players that were actually caught cheating. And here is one thing that they did. You see, already seen his card. He's now placing the tray, and he makes like a short hand movement that actually says, I don't have anything in my hand. And that's illegal passing of information to his partner. And that was actually found long before we approached the field. Another thing that they did, if you see, is actually coin. And that indicates that he has short spade in his hand. He has only one spade in his hand. And here again, he's going to call just once to show that he has only one club in his hand. So that was actually demonstrate how bridge professionally is being played. By the way, those two Germans that were caught cheating were also the world champions for seniors, that is for players above 60 or something. And they actually been caught red-handed and removed from play for basically life. Now we go back to our story. That's Boye Brugland. He's the hero of our story. He's a bridge professional. He held the World Championship for 2007. And after the event that I will describe, he won the 2015 Personality of the Year award. Those are the two cheaters that we basically helped to uncover. Lotan Fisher and Schwartz. And in 2014 and 2015, they basically won everything that you can win. They won the World Championship, the transnational teams. They won the European Championship with Israel. They won 3 different North American Championships. When we caught them, it was like catching Lance Armstrong cheating. At the time, they were one of very few pairs that were considered like really in the world top, in a very short list of pairs. And that guy, he's not a professional bridge player or anything, but for him it was important for us to have those videos. He actually started taping videos and allowed cheaters to be uncovered. And he put all the videos online of tournament plays in Europe. And if it weren't for him, catching of cheaters would have been impossible. And as we will soon discover, most of European top pairs were cheating at the time. So what happened, several top European pairs were cheating at the time. So what happened on 2015 North American Bridge Championship? So Boye and his team were playing against their ex-teammates, Lotan Fisher and Schwartz. They were actually teammates before the play. And Ron and Lotan took a series of, let's say, ethical or bridge questionable decisions that led Boye suspect that they were cheating. Boye created a website, bridgecheaters.com. By the way, it's still online. If you want, you can check. And got sued for $1 million for slur. And Boye called for basically crowdsourcing people to watch the bridge games between Fisher, Schwartz, and their opponents, and try to find the code that they were using to cheat. A Swedish player, Per-Ola Kulin, breaks. We will see what breaks means, but he supposedly broken the code. The code, as he described it, was when they are sitting north-south and they are pushing the board, they will put the board on a certain position depending on which shoot they want led. For example, if I want spade to be led, I will push it towards partner. If I want club to be led, I will push the board toward me. If I want diamonds to be led, I put it in the middle. If I want heart to be led, I put it on the side. And if there is no preference then I'll just put the board somewhere and not remove it until partner leads. That's basically the sign for no preference. So that's breedsitters.com, that's the website, and that's basically the accusation against them. Basically, in all those cases, they put the board in the center, and that's where they are actually declaring the hand. Now, when they are defending the hand, they are taking the board and put it somewhere according to a signal. Sorry. Sorry. That's basically all the normal position. Now you see actually pushes the board to a position that's not normal. See, putting it on the side, and that's actually a case for a hard signal, again, a case for the hard signal, again, case for the hard signal. That's basically the irregular signaling here against for the spade signal. That's basically the irregularity. And here is the code. So when he pushes it all the way through, that's a signal for spade. When he places it on the side, that's a signal for heart. And when he places it on the middle, that's a signal for diamond. When he keeps it in his side of the board, that's a signal for club. That's how it looks like when I'm supposed to lead. So he pushes it all the way for a spade, and Schwartz leads the spade. He makes the unnatural move of placing that in the side after it was actually in the middle, and that's called for a heart. And he places it exactly in the middle, and Schwartz leads diamonds.
So somebody looked at this.
Yeah. We looked at something like 40 or 50 hours of videos trying to write everything that happened. And those Perola Colin and the Swedish guys, they did the same. We started counting like times he touches the shirt, times that he caught, times that's like 40 or 50 hours of probably the most boring show in the world, but and making lots of observation. So Kit will see another world champion. Oh, sorry. Kit Woolsey, another world champion, has actually wrote an article in breedswinners.com, that's the most popular breeds forum, about the events. He basically convinces most of the world that they are cheating. And what happens now? So first of all, Ron and Lotan are banned from playing by the Israeli Breeds Federation, by the European Breeds League, and by the American Contract Breeds League. So they cannot play. The three organizations independently charges them of ethical misconduct. And Israel resigns from the World Bridge Championship, Sweden takes its place, and the world moves on and finds 3 other cheaters that we never discussed. The world number 1 and number 2 players, Flavio Fantoni and Claudio Nunes, are found cheating and delivering information by the way they play the card, if it's played diagonally or horizontally on the board, and they are banned from play, and Monaco resigns from the World Bridge Championship. Smirnov and Piekrek, another German players, not the ones from the videos at first, but another pair, is also found cheating. They admit, and they are judged by the European Bridge League and by the German Bridge Federation. And Adam Budzinski and Cezary Belicki, 2 Polish players, are, let's say, banned from play, suspected of cheating. And Poland does not resign from the World Championship, and also wins the World Championship with 2 other players, not with Belicki and Budzinski. And we are not happy. Now, why are we unhappy? So, we are unhappy with the scientific method. We think that it might have been affected by prejudice against the pair, that people didn't like the pair. There is no fresh data. People looked at boards as they were already played and developed a method based on the board that were already played. The sample size was actually limited to some international event, to the European Bridge Championship, which we found too small. And there were only 11 suspected boards of cheating, and out of them we had 2 significant outliers that we thought, okay, that's impossible. Like a pair in that level, world champions, they might get 1 wrong, but 2 out of 11 is basically too much. And when all this started, at least 2 of us were defending the pair, getting lots of abuse in bridge forums, trying to prove that the scientific method that declared them cheaters was insufficient. Rezo actually defended them online and actually gave a speech and testimony in the Israeli Bridge Federation. I questioned the research method online. Amir was the only one that was convinced that they were cheating, but still was unhappy with the result. And we all had to explain, like, why Schwartz movement looks so unnatural. I mean, let's say they are not cheating, why do they make all those weird movements and unnatural movements to cheat? With respect to prejudice, I would say that Fisher and Schwartz were involved in cheating as juniors, and they are far from being the nicest players in the world. They are obnoxious, they are show-offs, and it's very possible that players wanted to put them out of the way. I mean, they are proud and annoying. Fresh boards. So, and by the way, several boards that were inconclusive mysteriously changed their marking over the internet to feed accusation against them better, which was again weird. Fresh boards. So the same boards were used to raise the hypothesis and to actually judge they are guilty. And that doesn't work that way, because bridge is played by human beings score, human beings need to go to the bathroom, human beings make some noises, human beings place the boards not so very accurately at the table. And if there was no separation and was no prediction, you can just say that, okay, you did a Texas sharpshooter and you draw the mark around where you actually hit, which is not something that is scientifically possible. How do one supposed to deal with no fresh data? So, first of all, there were more data. There was data from the Polish Premier League for bridge, which Fisher and Schwartz played as sponsored players. There were data from other tournaments that they played, and somebody actually suggested to use the data as well. Also, there was data from boards that they were playing east-west. Now, when they are playing east-west, they are not charged with removing the tray, but they can somehow touch the board. And we thought, okay, maybe that's signaling in some way. And there was a group, and I think that was what's done in the European Bridge League. I'm not sure because I was never present in their discussions, that tried to use the code, but with the east-west hand as well as the north-south, and nobody argued that the east-west and are basically new data, fresh data. And there is one more method that I used, and that's something that used in archaeology. How do you determine if something is historically significant when you find something? I mean, you cannot model anything in advance because you don't know what you're going to find. And then after you found it, how do you say it's significant or not? And we found a paper from 2007 analyzing a case where they found the tomb of Jesus in Israel. They found the tomb of Jesus. They actually say several important names from the New Testament, like Jesus, Matthias, Mary Magdalene, and they all found it in the same burial tomb, and they tried to figure out what are the odds to get so many important names, so many important historical figures in one burial tomb, and they said, okay, that's the grave of Jesus. And basically what they did was to multiply all possible names as were found in other historical information, and then they said, okay, so we don't have fresh data, but we've demonstrated the odds to find something as significant is very low. And if you start multiplying, then we figured out that the results are not that significant in breeds anymore. So they didn't like using that method. Now, the Kit Woolsey, who actually posted the original accusation, have sent me a private message claiming that the true test for hypothesis is the power of prediction. He basically agrees. And then he said, okay, they used just one set of boards. I predicted using the 3 other sets, except that wasn't what happened. I mean, there was a crowdsourcing call, and all the hands were actually available. They actually reviewed all hands, and then they raised the hypothesis. So you cannot check the hypothesis that you raised using 4 sets of hands on 3 sets of hands simply because somebody put just one set of hands on the website. So we disagreed. The European Bridge League had a hearing. They argued that, okay, we can use the 4 east-west end, the 5 east-west ends from the same tournament where they actually touched the board and use that as fresh data. And I would say, okay, that's fresh data, but then the north-south code included 5 options, including where you don't touch the tray and the board remains for no preference. And that doesn't work well for east-west, because east-west doesn't touch the board most of the time, and north-south are charged with removing the tray. So they developed a four-way signaling, and they just removed the no preference, and they said, if we don't touch the board, that means nothing. That's like random noise. But that makes the east-west hands not fresh anymore, in our opinion, because you only developed that method after you watched the east-west hand, you saw that there is no sign for no preference, and you decided what it means. I mean, you could say that putting the tray on Schwartz side or on Ron side, there's no preference or anything like that, and you picked specific meaning. So we said, okay, the east-west hands are not fresh anymore. Then we said, the sample size is too small. All in all, there were only 37 boards where Fisher and Schwartz defended. There were only 64 boards in question. They played 27 hands. They were on defense in 37 hands. Out of them, a signal was actually given. And a signal was actually given where there was no weak lead, there was no board that remains for no preference, and there was no case where it signals for diamonds, and in that case the board actually ends in the proper position. The signal was actually given only 11 times. And out of which 9 were correct. And if we consider the importance of archaeological finding, 9 out of 11 is not really sufficient. And fortunately, more boards were available. So we looked at other torments. But first, how was 9 out of 11 calculated? So experts were given the boards and said, if you had an illegal signaling method, what would you signal with such a hand? Some experts would pick, let's say, spades. Some would pick signal for hearts. Some would say signal for no preference. And then if any of the experts chose the signal actually on the table, that was considered true positive. However, experts are not always having the same opinion. On certain boards, experts can pick 3 or 4 different opinions. So the result of what would you signal is basically close to a coin toss and not really to 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 4 cases. And there were just 2 significant outliers that couldn't be explained. I had a world-class player tell me, I'm sure that they cheat, but this is not a way that they cheat. It's impossible that they cheat this way. I want them to be caught for real. The first outlier was that board where Schwartz was supposedly signaling for clubs. And if you look at Schwartz's hand, first he beat spades, he beat 3 spades, then he has the king, queen, 4 of hearts, he has a queen, jack 6 times of spades. I could find a reason to play for a spade signal, or to play for a heart signal, or even to play for no preference signal. But one thing that I'm not going to choose is signaling for clubs holding no clubs. That's basically impossible. Another outlier, which is less obvious, is that hand where Schwartz holds king, jack, 4 of clubs, but he actually doubles 5 clubs, so he says that he has clubs. And once more, no expert would actually choose a club signal. And if you look, Fisher actually plays spades, and Fisher is not likely to hold clubs in that auction anyway. So those 2 are basically 2 unexplained boards that couldn't be explained or adjusted or anything using the old method. And as I said, are we alone? So the vast majority, let's say 90% of the world, is more or less convinced that Fisher and Schwartz are cheating and that the method is actually what was published in Bridge Winners. There is a minority that rejected the claim, including Mr. In Only Run, who is world champion in Mind Games Olympics in 2014, and is like actually giving testimony that that's impossible, that that's the method of cheating that 2 world-class players would use. They get support from professors from Weizmann Institute of Science and CERN, claiming that the statistic was actually wrong. Mr. Ilam Gross, both Inon and Ilam have actually gave their testimony in the Israeli Bridge Federation, and it's available online. We believe, we don't know, that sponsors paid for their defense. Ron claimed that the defense cost 1 million shekels, which is between €250,000 or $250,000. So we think somebody else paid for that defense. And we try to look at the stuff, and what did we find? First of all, we find that if you switch the spade signal and the club signal and look at the same data, you get 8 out of 11 that are correct. So 9 out of 11 doesn't sound like too much if you can switch the signals and still get the same results. By the way, the signal only includes 3 suits, spades, clubs, and hearts, and we switched 2 of them and got the same result. So it doesn't sound like too much. And Then when we try to look at other stuff which requires some bridge knowledge, but when we look at odd even ends or when we look at high car points, we can find other signaling methods that are just as good, getting the same 9 out of 11. But then when we look at other ends, we find that the other codes collapse, and the code proposed on the internet is usually working okay, but introduces one extra outlier from the Polish Bridge League. So perhaps it's not the correct code after all. But again, we are not sure why the movement of the board is so weird. So we look at the hand some more, and we find out that Fisher signals like 3 or 4 times more than Schwartz. Fisher's signaling whenever he's on defense, Schwartz signaling whenever he actually has something to say. And we start with the hypothesis that let's not use near-far as P.O. Collins suggested, but let's use near-Schwartz, near-Fisher signaling method, which is basically our innovation. So if you look at Fisher signaling, that remains the same because near is basically near Fisher. But if you look at Schwartz signaling, then his signaling is actually the opposite of Collins method. And all of a sudden, basically, it all makes sense. We have 11 out of 11. Everything is correct. We don't have any outliers. So we wanted to test it further. And we looked at additional boards that they played. We watched at some more hours of basically 4 fat men playing bridge. We found 7 more hands from the Polish Bridge League. We found 5 more hands from the European Bridge Championship where they played East-West. We found 1 more bridge hand from the North American Bridge Championship. And we found 1 more hand from the European Open Team Championship in Tromsø. And basically, it all makes sense. It all fits. And then we have to figure out what to do. And I'm taking a legal detour. Now, I'm saying once more, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not so sure that everything that I describe here is correct. But Fisher and Schwartz were facing 3 different trials on 3 different jurisdictions. The American Controlled Bridge League, the European Bridge League, and the Israeli Bridge Federation. And we are not sure. I mean, they already have submitted the accusations. Can you change the accusation while the trial still goes on? And if you can't, what does it mean if we publish that the code is wrong? Does double jeopardy apply? I mean, if they are found innocent of using one code, can you accuse them of using the other code? And if they are found not guilty, are they off the hook? And do they need to be proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt? Or is there a more electric criteria? We don't know. But I can tell you what we decided. We decided to wait until the hearing in the European Bridge League and not publish anything by then, because we thought that, okay, the code is not like airtight, it's not correct, but we think that it's enough to actually convict them. We don't want to mess with the legal case that actually happens. We held everything unpublished until European Bridge League actually delivered the verdict. But we did talk about the results, and it's possible that the judges in the European Bridge League knew that the code is not correct, but they knew that there is a correct code that they cannot modify and they cannot actually use to charge the pair. After the ABL generated a guilty verdict, we actually released our results, and the Israeli Bridge Federation for sure, and we think the American Contract Bridge League, which held a trial in August, we think that they used our code to accuse the pair. So the aftermath for Fisher and Schwartz, the European Bridge League convicted Fisher and Schwartz of cheating and banned them for playing for 5 years. And they also issued a massive fine, which we think that Fisher and Schwartz will not pay and they will be banned for life. The European Breeds League actually noted that they are not using proven beyond all reasonable doubt, but only proven to sufficient probability that they are cheating. Perhaps it's because they heard of our code. The American Contract Breeds League expelled Fisher and Schwartz for good. They removed them to play for life. The Israeli Breeds Federation, which we think held the most thorough examination and the longest hearings, have concluded its hearing and is supposed to release a verdict, but after the two previous verdicts were actually published without anything but a guilty verdict will be released. As for the other cheaters that we didn't deal with, the Italian Breeds Federation and the European Breeds League convicted Fantoni Nunes. The American Contract Breeds League expelled them for life. The Deutsche Breeds Federation, the German Breeds Federation, and the European Breeds Federation convicted Piekrek and Smirnov, and the EBL is still reviewing the Belitsky-Zmuzinski case. We think that, actually, I don't want to give predictions. Fisher opened a pub, Schwartz, Fisher this degree in chemistry, and they are hopefully outside of Breeds world for good. We wish them all the best, but don't play Breeds ever again. What did we achieve? So Fisher and Schwartz are outside the world of Breeds, hopefully for life. The sponsors deserted the Fisher and Schwartz. Fisher and Schwartz reported that they fired their lawyers. That's when we heard that it cost 1 million shekels to actually pay them. There is no longer a shred of doubt in anybody's mind that they were cheating. All the players that supported them initially deserted. And I still argue about scientific method with some professor from Chicago. Perhaps the argument will never end. Some advice for cheaters. If you do cheat, try not to be obnoxious. One of the reasons that Fantoni Nunes managed to cheat for about 20 years and Fisher and Schwartz were caught after 1 year after cameras were available was because Fisher and Schwartz were obnoxious and basically raised the entire world against them. And we figured that it seems pretty easy to develop some unbreakable code. For example, generate some pseudo-random string which you cannot break and just move the code, rotate the code based on the pseudo-random string, and that's basically unbreakable. And if you are caught cheating and somebody is accusing you of using incorrect code, shut up. One of the things that Fisher and Schwartz did, which was very bad for them, was trying to basically accuse Boyev of slur, suing him for $1 million, trying to raise too much noise, and as a result, we got involved and we broke their code. So perhaps if only they were shutting up, this would have gone away. And advice for researchers, authorities, vigilantes. So in Breeds, there is this, show us the code. We will not convict a pair unless somebody shows the code and prove that they were actually cheating. And that doesn't work. As we said, I mean, I can define unbreakable code. I can just generate some random string of numbers, and Breeds players are very good at memorizing numbers. So we think that basically all future codes and all future cheaters will not be detectable by breaking the code. Another thing is when trying to break the code, try to look at the code from the recipient perspective, because, for example, one of the things that we found out, in one of the cases, East-West helped Fisher and Schwartz, and East removed the board from the table and placed it on the table. But that was actually sending a signal to the other end. So don't ignore those things, don't ignore those outliers, try to look at camera angles. We actually sat near a screen and tried to figure out how things look from the player's perspective, not only from the camera perspective, and things sometimes look different. So that's actually important. There is now talk in Breeds to stop using physical cards, start playing on iPads or stuff, and start sending electronic signals, because that will remove cheating. Well, I guess I can tell you in this room that any electronic means is not going to stop cheating. People will break into the iPhone or iPad. People will find some ways to broadcast information. I mean, the fact that you are using cards or not using cards is not going to stop or prevent cheating. What would prevent cheating is when somebody does something irregular, then question him, try to receive the logic, and if somebody makes too many questionable moves and is world champion, he's probably cheating. And one more thing, don't expect any praises. I'm still involved in credit wars about it. That's why I was very precise at what we contributed and what others contributed. But people are more happy to fight over credit than to actually think what you did is good. And the last thing is something very, very unique. We actually had two cheating pairs, the Germans Smirnov and Piekrek, playing against Fisher and Schwartz on the European Bridge Team Championship. And 1.5 hours into the match, it appears that Fisher was caught cheating. Piekrek catches him, tells him that he's moving the board, and he's signaling by moving the board, and Fisher more or less laughs it off. And then 2 hours into the match, Fisher tells Piekrek, okay, I know how you are cheating. You are cheating in a certain way. You are placing the cards in a certain way to tell your partner if you are minimum or maximum for your bids. And he's writing down, like, Piekrek makes some bids that is 6 to 10 points. He writes down, you have 10 to 11 points, and basically catches him online. And of course, neither Smirnov, nor Piekrek, nor Fisher, nor Schwartz actually reported each other. They basically signaled, okay, we know, and let's continue and get on with our cheating. So that was actually funny. Okay, so okay, Fisher actually moves the board because that's how he's cheating, and he's actually telling him, I know that you are cheating. Then 30 minutes later, he makes an opening bid of 2 diamonds, which he places near him, which is 6 to 10 points. Fisher is actually moving the bid. Oh, shit. Fisher is actually moving the bid, so now it's near his partner. Now it's actually shows 6 points instead of 10, and he's writing down on his note that you have shown 10 to 11 points, which is actually readable. And Smirnov just says, like, okay, and proceed. So basically, 2 cheaters catching each other live, breaking each other code during play, and of course not reporting. And again, credits. So we use the work of Boye Brugland, Perula Collin, Trem Tira, and Keith Woolsey. The videos that I presented, especially with the audio and like zest of stuff, is by Michael Clark. And lots of thanks to Inon Liran, Eldad Ginosar, Udi Friedlinder, Gilad Ophir, Nicholas Omand, and Professor Greg Lawler for helping with the stuff and generating more data on the case. Thank you.